Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro denounced the United States' foreign policy in the region, describing it as a violation of international law and an attack against all of humanity. In Chile, the Electoral Service conducted a national voting drill with the aim of familiarizing citizens with the election process ahead of the general elections to be held this Sunday. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said Friday that the war in Sudan is an armed conflict over resources and raw materials, in which the international community must take action. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernanda from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro denounced the United States' foreign policy in the region, describing it as a violation of international law and an attack against all of humanity. The Venezuelan leader attributed this offensive to extremist right-wing forces in power in Washington. He denounced a resurgence of imperialist and colonialist sentiments that despise the peoples and their lives. The head of state emphasized that the aggression is not only against his government or against Venezuela, but that it is an offensive directed against all of Latin America and the Caribbean, and ultimately against humanity. With this denunciation, Venezuela seeks to alert the international community to what it considers an existential threat to the public law system and peaceful coexistence among nations. During his speech at the International Jurist Conference, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro called the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean to unite in the struggle against what he described as the empire of the evil.
Have to cultivate the consciousness and the permanent rebelliousness of the people and of everyone. If we all rebel against the empire of evil and the Nazis, who can take us? We Christians have a saying that says that if God is with us, who is against us? And I am a revolutionary, and I say that if all of the conscious people of this Americas rebelled against imperialism and its attempt of bringing a war, who can take us?
For its part, the Bolivarian Alliance of the Peoples of Our America, People's Trade Treaty, denounced the aggressive escalation of the United States against Venezuela. In a statement, the organization denounced, "The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America categorically condemns the recent offensive escalation of hostile and provocative statements issued by spokespeople from the United States government against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. These are discredited figures without moral authority who resort to ridiculous falsehoods and pretexts in an attempt to create a scenario that our people already know all too well." Also, the ALBA TCP ruled, "The alliance clearly warns, if the United States dares to take the leap from psychological and media operations to reckless military movement of aggression against Venezuela, the entire Caribbean could enter into unprecedented destabilization. No power must threat regional peace or underestimate the conscience of our people." Finally, it reiterated, "The Bolivarian Alliance reaffirms its full support for the people and government of Venezuela and condemns this new media aggression and misinformation campaign, which only reflects the political decline of those who promote it. Our peoples will not be fooled by empty threats or despicable rhetoric." Also in Venezuela, the third Turkey 2025 Expo Fair is moving forward, with the participation of more than 40 companies that are strengthening Turkish-Venezuelan cooperation. The event is being held to mark 75 years of diplomatic relations between Turkey and Venezuela, and is highlighted as a key venue for investors to meet. Also at the fair, participants have exhibited and promoted culture and projected joint development between the two nations. It is worth noting that this meeting will take place at the Simón Bolívar Park Convention Center in La Carlota, Miranda State, until next Saturday, November 15th. In a new threat against Latin America and the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago has announced that U.S. Marines will be deployed to conduct military exercises as Washington increases naval presence in the Caribbean. Under the pretext of combating gang violence and gun crime, the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit will remain in the country until November 21st. The maneuvers will include night operations in urban and rural areas, raising concerns about the normalization of foreign troops in citizens' daily lives. The deployment on land is happening at the same time as the arrival of USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, as part of the Pentagon's Operation Southern Spear. These actions violate international law and threaten the declaration of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. Also, in a statement, the network of intellectuals and artists in defense of humanity denounces the aggressions being carried out in the Caribbean Sea by the United States government. We condemned and alert the international community to a new escalation by U.S. government with the dispatch of the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford, which joins the military forces already present, announcing the implementation of the Operation Southern Spear plan, under the baseless pretext of the fight against drug trafficking. Let us denounce that this military escalation could turn into a military confrontation against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which would bring about a massacre and geopolitical destabilization in the American continent and the world. In turn, through a communique, Casa de las Americas in Cuba denounced the military escalation by the U.S. government, which not only affects Venezuela but also the self-determination and sovereignty of the peoples of the Americas and the Caribbean. It states that Casa de las Americas denounced this escalation from the outset, aware that it is not only a danger to Venezuela, but also a slap in the face to the self-determination and sovereignty of our peoples. An action against any of the broader countries of the continent is a blow to all. While some focus on the images of Gerald R. Ford as if it were a video game, those of us who have experienced imperial aggression and violence firsthand condemn the preamble to a very serious crime and call for international solidarity with the peoples of the region. And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Chile, the Electoral Service conducted a national voting drill with the aim of familiarizing citizens with the elections process ahead of the general elections to be held on Sunday. Election officials unveiled the new ballot that will be used in the presidential and parliamentary elections on November 16th. They also highlighted the size of the electoral roll, the obligation to vote, the participation of Chileans abroad, and the role of the armed forces in guarding the material and maintaining public order. It should be noted that during these elections, Chileans will elect the president of the nation, new senators, and members of the parliament. Meanwhile, in Argentina, an explosion occurred Friday night at a chemical factory in Ezeiza Industrial Park in Buenos Aires, spreading alarm among the residents of the area and leaving more than 20 injured. The shockwave shattered glass windows in nearby houses and even blew roofs off, while the Ezeiza-Cañuelas highway was also closed as a result of the incident. At this time, there are no reports of fatalities, but many hospitals in the area are receiving people with burns and other injuries caused by the tragic explosion. Local authorities ordered citizens to remain indoors, as a toxic cloud could form. The cause of the blast has not yet been determined. With 60,000 people from around the world participating in COP30, there is a growing tension between business community supporters of green capitalism and the social movements and activists who support eco-socialism as the best way to fight climate change. Our correspondent Brian Meir has more details.
Underway in Belém are trying to rally everyone behind a common fight against the climate crisis, but there seem to be unreconcilable differences among different participants. For example, there are businesses and foundations which they financially support who argue that corporations are capable of playing a leadership role in things like the transformation to renewable energy. Many activists disagree.
Large corporations are in bed with governments so that they can take over these negotiations and use climate crisis as an opportunity to create more money and profit from all the actions. And we are seeing that instead of democratizing and decolonizing the energy systems, they are trying to take over. We are seeing the same big companies who have been responsible for the climate crisis, the big oil, they are now trying to turn green and take over these sectors. And that's something which is not acceptable. They are coming after our natural resources, our critical minerals, and they are trying to promote green capitalism. And that's what we need to fight against.
For many of the estimated 30,000 members of the social movements, indigenous nations, and forest dweller communities participating in the Alternative Peoples Summit, underway at Pará Federal University across town, the most effective way to end environmental devastation is through the transformation to socialism.
A crise ambiental é uma
The
expressão
environmental crisis is an expression of the destructive and predatory mode of production of capitalism.
capitalista, né? E na nossa perspectiva,
Our perspective is that the fight against the environmental crisis and the fight for another project for
o
society
projeto de sociedade exige uma transformação
demands a radical transformation in the mode of production and distribution of wealth in our country.
distribuição das riquezas no nosso país, né? No fundo,
Therefore, we defend the socialization of our wealth and we defend another form of the production and reproduction of life.
outra forma de produção e reprodução da vida.
If there's one thing that most participants of COP30 and the People's Summit seem to agree on, however, it's that the climate change crisis is a reality and huge changes will be needed to curtail it. Brian Mir, teleSUR, Belém.
In São Paulo, Brazil, an explosion occurred at an illegal fireworks storage facility east of the city. The accident took place in Tatuapé neighborhood, with at least one fatality and nearly 10 injured. Fire departments, police and emergency services report that the explosion caused residential buildings to collapse and vehicles were also damaged, leading to the temporary closure of roads. Authorities indicate that the stored fireworks were intended for the manufacturing of balloons, and an investigation has been launched to determine the causes of the accident. In other news, over 13.9 billion voters in Ecuador are called to vote in the referendum to be held next Sunday, November 16th. President Daniel Noboa's referendum asked Ecuadorian vote on the establishment of a constituent assembly to draft a new constitution to replace the one approved during the term of former President Rafael Correa from 2007 to 17. The other three questions are about the reinstatement of foreign military bases, the elimination of public funding for political organizations, and the reduction of assembly members from 151 to 73. The referendum follows the national strike from September to October 2025. The government heavily repressed the strike, leaving at least 3 dead, over 470 injured, and hundreds of reports of human rights violations by security forces. Moving now to Cuba, President Miguel Díaz-Canel personally oversaw recovery efforts in Granma province, one of the areas hardest hit by the Hurricane Melissa. The Cuban president visited the municipality of Rio Cauto in the eastern province of Granma to assess the damage caused by Hurricane Melissa after the severe flooding left by the weather phenomenon as it passed over the island. This is the third visit by the head of state to the region to assess the progress made in the rehabilitation of housing, infrastructure, and basic services. During his tour, Díaz-Canel spoke with affected families and instructed local authorities to speed up the delivery of resources to ensure the vitality of the area. We have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, but we'll be right back with more from the south. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Haiti, the Ministry of Public Health reinforced epidemiological surveillance in the southeast of the country, with the aim of strengthening local capacity for the active detection of cholera cases. Work teams have deployed staff to neighborhoods and displacement sites to ensure immediate care. At the same time, they have supplied essential items, including oral rehydration salts and vital medicines, to the affected communities. Between September and November of this year, 372 suspected cases were identified, resulting in 75 confirmed cases and 17 deaths. On the other hand, although this cyclone did not make direct landfall, heavy rains and flooding damaged water and sanitation infrastructure, exacerbating the risk of transmission in overcrowded neighborhoods with inadequate sanitation. In other news, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said Friday that the war in Sudan is an armed conflict over resources and raw materials, in which the international community must take action. The statement was made at a special session of the United Nations Human Rights Council on crimes committed during and after the siege of the city of El Fasher. Turk also emphasized that the Security Council must refer and denounce the abuses in this conflict to the International Criminal Court. The UN official informed that thousands of civilian killings, ethnically motivated executions, sexual violence, kidnappings, arbitrary detentions, and attacks on healthcare workers in the region have been reported after the fall of the city of El Fasher. Turk reiterated his calls for the international community to impose an arms embargo on the entire territory of Sudan, and not just the western region of Darfur. Meanwhile, the United Nations organization stated that 114 Lebanese civilians have lost their lives due to violations of the ceasefire since the start of November by the Israeli regime. The spokesperson for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Tamim Al-Qaitan, announced that civilian deaths have continued to rise since the ceasefire began, and the residents of the area have lived in instability and fear for more than 2 years. She also said that the Israeli regime has once again invaded Lebanese territory by building a concrete wall in the area and is threatening the fragile violence along the border. It should be noted that since the beginning of the Israeli offensive in October 2023, more than 4,000 people have been killed and almost 17,000 injured in the country. In the United States, Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and 20 other representatives introduced a resolution in the U.S. Congress to officially recognize the Israeli offensive in Gaza as genocide. The proposal presented this Friday in the House of Representatives declares that Israel has committed the crime of genocide against the Palestinian people. The text demands the immediate cessation of the transfer of weapons that could be used to commit atrocities in Gaza, and supports the facilitation of internal investigations and the adoption of legal measures. The resolution comes in a critical context. The 10-year memorandum of understanding that grants Israel $3.8 billion in annual military aid is set to expire in 2026, which will rekindle the debate on U.S. assistance. Moving to Palestine, the first western storm in the Gaza Strip has flooded its camps in displaced Palestinians as they struggle against a critical increasing shortage of houses. According to the Gaza Human Rights Center, almost 2 million Palestinians are facing a growing humanitarian crisis, in which only 23% of winter shelters needs have been met. The center also called on the international community and humanitarian organizations to take urgent action and provide safe tents, blankets, and winter clothing in preparation for the arrival of winter. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For telesur English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.